In 1961, a 7-year-old boy watched his father come home from work, defeated and broken. His dad had fallen on ice while delivering diapers door to door, breaking his leg and his ankle. With no health insurance, no workers' compensation, and no safety net, the family was thrust into financial chaos. That little boy made himself a promise that day. A promise that would eventually revolutionize how the world drinks coffee and thinks about employee benefits. This is the story of Howard Schultz, and how a kid from the Brooklyn housing projects built a $100 billion coffee empire called Starbucks. Howard Schultz was born on the 19th of July, 1953, in Brooklyn, New York, in the heart of one of the city's toughest neighborhoods, the Canarsie Bayview Houses, a public housing project. His father, Fred Schultz, was a blue-collar worker who bounced between jobs, truck driver, factory worker, diaper delivery man. His mother, Elaine, worked as a receptionist to help make ends meet. The Schultz family lived in a cramped 2-bedroom apartment with Howard, his younger brother Michael, and sister Ronnie. Money was always tight. Dinner conversations often revolved around which bills could be paid and which would have to wait another month. But it was that pivotal moment when Howard was 7, watching his father's injury destroy their family's financial stability, that planted the first seeds of his future business philosophy. Years later, Schultz would recall the shame and helplessness he felt, watching his proud father reduced to sitting at home with a broken leg and no income. Young Howard found his escape on the football field and basketball court. Sports became his sanctuary, his way of dreaming beyond the concrete walls of the housing projects. He was determined to use athletics as his ticket out of poverty, and it worked. Howard earned a football scholarship to Northern Michigan University in 1971, becoming the first person in his family to attend college. But even this victory came with challenges. He felt out of place among his wealthier classmates, often eating alone and struggling to fit in socially. After graduating with a degree in communications in 1975, Howard returned to New York with big dreams, but little direction. The reality of post-college life hit hard. He took a job selling typewriters and word processors for Xerox, pounding the pavement in Manhattan, facing rejection after rejection. The work was grueling. Cold calls, door-to-door sales, constant rejection. For every yes, there were dozens of no's. But Howard learned something valuable during these tough early years. He learned how to connect with people, how to tell a story, and how to persist despite overwhelming odds. After 3 years at Xerox, Howard moved to a Swedish company called Perstorp, selling housewares and kitchenware. It was here that he first encountered the coffee business, though he didn't know it yet. One of his accounts was a small Seattle-based coffee bean retailer that kept placing unusually large orders for a specific type of drip coffee maker. The company was called Starbucks Coffee, Tea and Spices. Intrigued by these consistent large orders, Howard decided to investigate. In 1981, he flew to Seattle to visit this mysterious coffee company. What he found would change his life forever. When Howard walked into the original Starbucks store at Pike Place Market, he experienced what he would later describe as love at first sight. The aroma of freshly roasted coffee beans, the passion of the founders, Jerry Baldwin, Zev Siegel, and Gordon Bowker. And the quality of the product created an atmosphere unlike anything he'd experienced. Starbucks in 1981 was very different from what we know today. They were strictly a coffee bean retailer. No drinks, no cafes, just selling high-quality coffee beans and equipment to coffee enthusiasts. But Howard saw something more. He saw potential. He pestered the founders for months, trying to convince them to hire him. They were skeptical. What did this fast-talking New Yorker know about coffee? But Howard's persistence paid off. In 1982, they offered him a job as director of marketing and retail operations. Howard moved his young family. He had married Sherry Kirsch in 1982 across the country to Seattle, taking a significant pay cut to join a company with just 4 stores. His friends and family thought he was crazy. Why leave a successful career in New York to work for a tiny coffee company in the Pacific Northwest? But Howard had a vision, even if he couldn't articulate it yet. In 1983, Howard was sent to Italy for a trade show. This trip would become the defining moment of his career. Walking through the streets of Milan, he discovered something that would revolutionize his understanding of coffee culture. Italian coffee bars, or espresso bars, were everywhere. But these weren't just places to grab a quick cup of coffee. They were social hubs, community gathering, places where people connected, conducted business, and celebrated life. The baristas weren't just servers, they were skilled craftsmen creating an experience. Howard was mesmerized. He spent hours in these cafes, observing, learning, falling in love with the ritual and romance of Italian coffee culture. He had his eureka moment. This was what Starbucks could become. Not just a retailer of coffee beans, but a creator of experiences, a third place between home and work where people could connect over great coffee. He returned to Seattle bursting with excitement and ideas. He pitched his vision to the Starbucks founders. They should start serving fresh brewed coffee drinks, create a cafe atmosphere, and bring the Italian coffee bar experience to America. The founders weren't interested. They were happy being a coffee bean retailer. They didn't want to get into the restaurant business. This was Howard's first major professional rejection, but it wouldn't be his last. Despite the founders' reluctance, Howard convinced them to let him test his concept in one corner of their newest store. The response was immediate and positive. Customers loved the fresh brewed coffee drinks. Lines formed. Revenue increased. But the founders remained unconvinced. The philosophical divide between Howard's vision and their business model grew wider. Tensions mounted. Finally, in 1985, Howard made a difficult decision. He would leave Starbucks and start his own company. He called it Il Giornale, Italian for the daily, and his plan was to create a chain of Italian-style espresso bars. There was just one problem. He needed money, and investors weren't buying his vision. Howard spent months pitching his idea to potential investors. He was rejected 217 times. 217 rejections. Investors told him Americans would never pay premium prices for coffee. They said the Italian concept wouldn't work in America. They questioned whether coffee could really be a social experience. The rejections were brutal and personal. Some investors were dismissive, others were downright hostile. Howard's confidence wavered. The kid from the housing projects began to doubt whether he belonged in the world of high-stakes business. But he didn't give up. Finally, after months of rejection, Howard found a group of investors willing to take a chance on his vision. They raised $1.25 million. Not a huge amount, but enough to get started. In 1986, Il Giornale opened its first location in downtown Seattle. The early days were challenging. Howard was involved in every aspect of the business: hiring, training, cleaning, even working behind the counter. He obsessed over every detail: the quality of the coffee, the training of the baristas, the atmosphere of the stores. But slowly, the concept began to work. Customers embraced the experience. Word spread. Within a year, Il Giornale had 3 locations and was turning a profit. Then, in 1987, opportunity knocked in an unexpected way. The original Starbucks founders decided they wanted to focus on another business venture and were willing to sell the Starbucks name in stores. Howard saw his chance. He needed $3.8 million to buy Starbucks, a massive sum for his small company. Once again, he hit the fundraising trail. This time, the pitch was easier. He had a proven concept, positive cash flow, and a clear vision for growth. In August 1987, Howard Schultz acquired Starbucks Coffee Company and merged it with Il Giornale. The boy from the Brooklyn housing projects was now CEO of a coffee company with 6 stores and 100 employees. What happened next was nothing short of remarkable. Under Howard's leadership, Starbucks began expanding rapidly, but not recklessly. He maintained his obsessive focus on quality, the coffee, the experience, and most importantly, the employees. Remember that 7-year-old boy who watched his father suffer without health insurance? Howard never forgot that lesson. In 1988, Starbucks became one of the first companies in America to offer comprehensive health insurance and stock options to part-time employees. He called the employees partners, not workers, and gave them a stake in the company's success. Other business leaders thought he was crazy. Why give benefits to part-time coffee shop workers? Howard's answer was simple. We're not in the coffee business serving people, we're in the people business serving coffee. This philosophy became the foundation of Starbucks culture and one of the keys to its success. When employees felt valued and invested in the company's success, they provided better customer service, which drove customer loyalty, which drove growth. The The numbers tell the story. By 1992, Starbucks had 165 stores. By 1996, over 1,000. By 2000, over 3,500 stores worldwide. The company went public in 1992, and those early employees who received stock options became millionaires. But success brought new challenges. By the mid-2000s, Starbucks had grown into a global phenomenon with over 15,000 stores worldwide. But Howard began to worry that rapid expansion was diluting the company's soul. The intimate coffee shop experience was being lost in the pursuit of growth. Customer satisfaction was declining. Same-store sales were dropping. Competitors were gaining ground. Wall Street was losing patience. In 2007, Howard made the difficult decision to fire himself as CEO, though he remained chairman. But the problems persisted. The new CEO struggled to recapture the magic. Stock prices plummeted. Store closures were announced. The company that Howard had built was in crisis. In January 2008, Howard made an unprecedented decision. He fired the CEO and returned to lead the company himself, despite having no obligation to do so. He was wealthy beyond his wildest dreams and could have walked away. Instead, he chose to fight for the company he loved. His first move was dramatic. He closed all 7,100 US stores for one afternoon to retrain baristas on making the perfect espresso. The cost was enormous, millions in lost revenue for a single afternoon. Critics called it a publicity stunt. But Howard understood something critics didn't. Starbucks wasn't just a coffee company. It was a culture, an experience, a community. And that was worth fighting for. Today, Starbucks operates over 35,000 stores in more than 80 countries. The company employs nearly 400,000 people worldwide and generates over $30 billion in annual revenue. Howard Schultz's net worth exceeds $4 billion. But perhaps more importantly, Starbucks fundamentally changed how Americans think about coffee, workplace benefits, and corporate responsibility. The company's commitment to employee benefits, environmental sustainability, and social justice issues has influenced countless other businesses. The boy from the Canarsie housing projects, who once watched his father suffer without health insurance, created a company that now provides healthcare to hundreds of thousands of employees and their families. Howard Schultz's story teaches us that success isn't just about overcoming poverty or building wealth. It's about remembering where you came from, staying true to your values, and using your success to lift others up. From 217 rejections to a $100 billion company, from a Brooklyn housing project to boardrooms around the world, Howard Schultz proved that with enough persistence, passion, and purpose, anyone can transform not just their own life, but the lives of millions of others. The next time you walk into a Starbucks, remember, you're not just buying coffee. You're experiencing the dream of a kid from Brooklyn who refused to give up. Thanks for watching. If this story inspired you, don't forget to like and subscribe for more incredible journeys from failure to success. What's your biggest dream? Let us know in the comments below.